Hey everybody, welcome back in the shed. I'm Troy, this is Dave.
Hello.
And today we're going to take a trip down memory lane and pay tribute to the great musicians that have been in the shed but are sadly no longer with us.
You know, it's been about 7 years since you first came up with the idea of doing In the Shed and approached me, and well, I had the shed, and hence here's where it goes down. But unfortunately, time marches on, and it's taken 6 of our previous In the Shed guests with it.
So we're going to pay tribute to those great musicians tonight. And the first one we're going to talk about is David Zacek, who was our very first interview in the shed. The idea for the shed came from knowing David Zacek, because I knew David Zacek for probably a little over 20 years. I recorded 4 albums at his studio that he ran. Did a lot, pretty much all of his music videos. Hung out with him some. We'd go see him play all the time. And I had always heard these stories about he was in Airborne, he played with Night Ranger, but I never really had an opportunity to talk to him about, you know, his career. One of the reasons I wanted to do In the Shed in the first place was to talk to him and ask him these questions and get sort of his life story documented. So David was just a badass guitar player. Everybody that knew David, loved David. He never talked bad about any person. Everybody was a friend. You could go see him play somewhere around Waco, and he was your best friend. And he never had that rock star attitude like some guys do, you know?
You know, I met him the first time here in the shed. We had a great conversation. It was really raw, you know, it was our first one, but it was good. And it was off the cuff. We didn't have a script. We didn't do anything. And, you know, I remember I made ribs that day.
Yeah.
And I've never seen a skinny little guy like Dave eat as many ribs as that man did. But yeah, it was a great episode, I thought. And unfortunately, you know, he got sick later and left us. And we actually did a episode later after he'd been diagnosed, and we were fortunate to get that as well.
Baby, thanks me looking up on me. Woo-hoo-hoo. When I get down to you, baby, we'll be rolling on the floor. You better close the curtains and you better lock the door.
He didn't know how sick he was. Nobody knew how sick he was. He never really talked about having cancer and being sick, and you know, he thought he was going to live forever, and so all of us did, really. I mean, we never thought we would lose David Zacek.
You know, that concert that they did out at the Ice House was really special, because there was several bands that we had actually interviewed, like Soul Drive and some of them, but Ted Nugent was there, and just a lot of outpouring of love and affection. Couldn't beat it, but he lives on.
The next artist we want to talk about is Tony Calhoun. Tony Calhoun actually played with David Zacek in the last band David Zacek had, which was the Mojo Assassins.
Yes.
He was a badass bass player for sure. He was an amazing songwriter. I think David and Tony wrote all the songs on that album.
And great vocalist.
Great vocalist, funk player. He could play some funk.
We got a song that we wrote for you. Little something that we like to do. Hope we play what you like to hear today.
Before he passed away, he played bass for Billy Joe Shaver,
yes,
which we sadly lost. Also, we were trying to get him in the shed, but unfortunately that never happened.
I think Tony was probably up there at the gates waiting for Billy Joe when his time came, because it was really kind of tragic how quick Tony left us, and no one expected it. He definitely had a second blooming of his career playing with Billy Joe and with Jeremy Lynn Woodall, who's also one of our guests. And I was really glad to see Billy Joe take him in as the bass player. And they were, you know, they toured a lot, and in their van.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that.
I saw Jeremy put something on Facebook today about the old van that they would tour in up and down the United States all the time.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
They definitely were road warriors, and Tony was phenomenal on bass, and just he was funky, but he could play anything.
Yeah.
And he was a great singer. So
yeah, he was one of those guys he was just one of the nicest guys you'd ever meet. You know, never had that rock star attitude. I'd see him at Brazos Nights or something, and he would always come, "Hey Troy, what's up? What's going on?"
Me too. I'd run into him. I ran into him at Austin Avenue one time, and you know, it was like an old friend, even though I was you know, didn't know him that long, but I knew him from our In the Shed time. And
yeah,
rest in peace, Tony.
The next artist we're going to talk about is truly an artist. His stage name was Devad Nedlow.
David Holden.
David Holden.
Spelled backwards.
He was also a very good guitar player. I remember, so I met David. I lived probably about 3 or 4 houses down from David in the mid to late 90s. He was in high school. I think it was like 15 or 16. I was 25, 26, something like that. And the band I had at the time, we would practice in our living room. And all of a sudden, somebody comes knocking at the door, and it's David and the guy who played bass in his band at the time, Waco. They called him Waco. I don't know whatever happened to Waco. If you know what happened to Waco, leave a comment and let me know, because I have no idea what happened to this guy. But they came in, they're like, "Oh man, you guys are jamming." So they picked up, David picked up the guitar and started playing, and I'm like, "Oh my God, this little 15-year-old kid is blowing me away on guitar."
Situation calls my heart. I think of you from time to time. You were with me for way too long. Remember we should have been gone.
He was an amazing guitar player, and we played some shows with him. We went back to my hometown of San Saba and did a show one, I think it was for Halloween or something. And he got up there and we did like some Alice in Chains and sang the harmonies, and he played guitar and yeah. He was a cool guy, but then he sort of disappeared off the face of the earth for a while, and I didn't see him for years. I mean, probably 15 years.
Well, according to his interview, he got on the wrong side of the law and got popped for something serious enough to send him to the joint. But the interview was great because he gave him time to, work on his craft. He had a guitar in prison, and
yeah, I guess that's all he did was play guitar.
That's what I do.
Yeah, nonstop.
And use it as a weapon if I needed it. But nah, he was real forthcoming and real honest.
He definitely had a second career playing around, and I think I can't remember where he lived, but he was always playing. He was always posting stuff on Facebook. Hey, I'm playing here, I'm playing there, and
yeah, he sought redemption and he got it, and he came back. And it was just tragic that he got in a wreck after a gig down in Llano, I think it was.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I was shocked when I saw that on Facebook.
Yeah,
I was
we
like,
were
oh my
totally,
God. I mean,
because he was shocked.
Yeah, I don't even think he was 40. I mean, he was still young. The next musician we're going to talk about is a country classic.
James Hand, James Slim Hand. We actually first met James Hand because we'd booked a In the Shed with Kayla Ray. And Kayla Ray came out and she brought this guy with her. And he was like dressed to the nines. I mean, it was like hot day too, I think. But he had a suit on. James came out, and after we did the interview with Kayla, he sat in here and played us a song. And I was like, holy crap, this guy's the real deal, man. We got to go ahead and...
we got to book him.
Got to book him, and we did.
Yeah.
And what I didn't realize, because I didn't know James at the time, or Slim, he was pretty well regarded in the, he's almost like under the radar as far as Texas country artists.
Moon over Mineola, as you roam and you shine, was my darling sleeping in her home back in the pine?
I remember reading about the Memoriam Awards that Dale Watson was going to create, and it was a retort to Blake Shelton making a comment about traditional country music was only for old farts and jackasses. So Dale puts on this Memoriam Awards, which is sort of like Americana, but it was more country. And I think the first award show, they had James Hand as a performer. You know, Charlie Crockett, who's about as big as you can get right now, he first saw James at that award show and became like a huge fan. And Charlie did a video about this song called How I Got to Memphis, and it was actually starring James Hand. James Hand's the actor in the whole video. And I was like, holy crap, because Charlie Crockett was actually, well, he's real huge now, but at the time he was pretty well known. If that's not credibility, I don't know what is in this modern age of, you know, traditional true country music.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he was definitely the real deal.
Yeah, and he was just, when we had him out here again for In the Shed, it was hot, man. It was like a hot night. Did we actually shoot it in here, or did we do it over here?
It seems like we did it over there.
I think we did it over there because it was a hot night, but he had a suit on. I don't think the guy owned a pair of shorts. But anyways, he was so nice, and we did the show, and afterwards he hung out, and we actually got some other guitars out. Me and Troy and James jammed out here on my patio.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And,
did we record some of that? I don't remember.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's on there.
The next musician we want to talk about is Kenny Frazier, who is another country classic. He played with, what's his name, the fiddle guy.
Johnny Gimble.
Johnny Gimble forever. He was in Johnny Gimble's band, and I remember the first time.
But he was kind of a jazz guy, too.
He was a jazz guy, and I remember seeing him at the Bosque River stage at MCC probably 20 years ago. And it was Johnny Gimble singing, playing the fiddle, and he was playing guitar. And I remember watching him and thinking, how is his fingers doing that?
He's sort of
he would play these like crazy chords that I've never seen
before. He was a Chet Atkins disciple, and first time I saw him was the great Tommy Emmanuel came to Waco and played at the River Stage, and it was a retirement party for Kenny, and they presented him a guitar, and then they, played, and then later played a little bit with Tommy and all that stuff, but I mean, you can't get any more respect than having the great Tommy Emmanuel.
Yeah.
In case you don't know who he is, look him up. There's no greater acoustic guitar player on the planet than
he's
Tommy.
the best for sure, yeah.
Man, you talk about a cool guy. We actually went out to his house to do that one. We did a remote because we didn't want to try to drag him out here and do all this. And it was probably hot.
It was probably 100 degrees out here.
Yeah, who knows? Rest in peace, man. I was so sad when I heard about that. Yeah. It wasn't that long ago.
No, it was pretty recent, yeah.
Yeah.
The last musician we're going to talk about is a blues legend, especially for Waco. He's like the B.B. King of Waco. But Classy Ballou. And he passed away pretty recently too, And,
yeah,
and he was one of those guys that could just, play two notes, but just make you feel it when he plays it.
We had so much soul with his singing.
Well, you made me love you. Now you have another man. Yes, you made me love you. Now you have another man. Walked the bone without you. Baby, it's more than I can say.
But he was like a Zydeco kingpin.
Yeah.
I mean, back in the 50s, he played with Boozoo Chavez, and I think he used to, like they used to do back in the day, he had a band, and when big acts would come to town, well, he was from Lake Charles, but when he moved to Waco, but when they'd come to town, you know, they'd hire a band, and God, Classy played with so many people, and he was such a character on our show.
Yeah.
And he had so many stories, and
Yeah.
and
A lot of these one-liners, and he would always
he loved Michael Jackson.
Yeah, he would always go, "Yeah, baby." That was sort of his catchphrase. But I did a documentary on Classy Ballou probably 6-7 years ago. I didn't do the interview, but somebody else did the interview. But I took the interview and I put together his life story. So that's on YouTube. I'll put a link to that below too.
He felt his music, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And it's just so sad we lost all these guys.
I know. I told Dave we can't come back and do it in the shed and not pay tribute to these amazing artists that we've lost over the last couple of years. And I think we should maybe toast them with something, with a little whiskey or something. You got something for us?
Of course.
All right, let's do it.
Here's a toast to all the great musicians that have been in the shed and the few that we lost in the last few years. Skull.
Oh man,
It's good.
what is that?
What's the matter, man? Whoa. This is Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey.